So don't say I never gave you none, because this video is literally a step-by-step blueprint to getting approved for your first $10,000 by Navy Federal. No hype, no shortcut, just the real process, step by step. So by the end of this video, you will know exactly how to set yourself up for that 10K approval. Now, before we jump in, if you're brand new to this channel, you should know that my name is Inni. This is My Life for Debt, where I try my very best to make business and credit simple and easy to understand. So subscribe and turn on your notifications and drop a comment down below. All right, so let's hop right in. When I first saw people talking about this Navy Federal hack, it reminded me of just how powerful relationships with credit unions really are. Because most people don't realize this, but you don't always need perfect credit or a 10-year credit history to qualify for big limit cards. What you do need is a bank that actually wants to grow with you. And that's what makes Navy Federal so different. I've been with Navy Federal for years now, and I'll be honest with you, they have been one of the most consistent financial institutions that I've ever dealt with. Their customer service is solid, and their people are polite, and they treat members like members, not like numbers. And that's why this strategy has worked for so many people for so long. You see, this isn't some magic trick. It's a combination of how Navy Federal's internal system works and how they view their members' relationship history. If you follow this exact step that I'm about to share with you, you're positioning yourself where the algorithm sees you as a trustworthy person, even if your overall credit profile isn't perfect. Now, a lot of people found this out when the strategy first went viral. I'm talking about hundreds of people who went and tried it, and then the same night came back with $10,000 approvals, and others went 15, 20, 18, $25,000, and even one person reported getting $28,000 on a brand new Navy Federal card. And most of them weren't walking in with high limit cards before that. They weren't sitting on pristine credit. They just follow the steps that I'm about to share with you right now. It starts with understanding how Navy Federal looks at your accounts. They care about whether you have money in your checking and savings accounts and whether those accounts are active and positive. So let's break that down. If you already have a Navy Federal account, meaning before applying for a card is make sure that both accounts are positive. It doesn't have to be a lot. In fact, you can use $100. You can have $100 sitting in your checking account and $100 in your savings account. If you use $500, you can put $200 in your checking account and $300 in your savings account. The specific number isn't magic. The positivity of the account is what matters. You just don't want to show zeros or a negative balance. Navy Federal system reads your relationship status, not just your credit profile. So having a consistent positive balance signals responsibility, and that's what triggers those higher auto approvals. Now, here's where the timing comes in. And this is where a lot of people missed out until this strategy went completely viral. When you actually submit the credit card application, you want to do it after 11 p.m. at night. Here's why. During regular business hours, you've got live underwriters that are reviewing applications. And sometimes they pull the application and then apply a manual judgment, which is way stricter. But after 11 p.m., most of the review process is handled by Navy Federal's automated system. And that system has its own internal scoring algorithm. And it's known for being way more generous than a human underwriter. So when you apply late at night, especially if your account looks healthy, your balances are positive, and your activity is normal, the computer often gives you the approval without any extra documentation needed. That's what triggers the $10,000 approvals. Now let's pause for a second, because if you've never been a Navy Federal member before, you're probably wondering, how do I even get in? That's a good question. To open a Navy Federal account, you need some sort of connection to the Navy Federal system. So you can be a military, government service, or you could be someone who served, or you could be an active duty person, you could be a veteran, or it could be somebody in your family who served, right? You could live in the same household as somebody who's in Navy Federal or somebody who is eligible, or you can just have a friend who is eligible. So it could be mom, dad, sister, spouse, even your children, all right? If one of them has someone they know that's a Navy Federal relationship, you can go in through them and join Navy Federal. Sometimes you can go to a local branch and the banker may not even ask you for a referral code. They'll simply just help you get in. And once you're in, the process is really simple. You open your checking, you open your savings, and then you put a little bit of money in both. You keep them positive. If you want me to help you get into Navy Federal, just drop a comment below and I'll set you up with my Navy Federal banking contact. But once you get in, the process is really simple. You open a checking, you open a savings, you put a little bit of money in both, and you keep them positive. You give the system a few days to recognize your activity. And then after that, you can apply for your first credit card after 11 p.m. That's the core of the method. But before we go deeper, I want you to understand why this matters, okay? When you get approved for a high limit credit card, let's say $10,000 or more, you're not just getting access to credit, you're changing your credit utilization ratio. Utilization is one of the biggest factors in your credit score. When your available credit increases, but your spending stays the same, your utilization percentage drops. And that drop usually translates into a score bump. I've seen it firsthand. When I first did this, within a matter of a month, my score jumped 50 points. Not because I paid off a huge debt, but because my available credit went up and my utilization dropped. And that's the power of this approach when you use it responsibly. Now let's talk about the responsible part. Because yes, getting approved for $10,000 is exciting, but what you do with that limit determines whether it helps you or it hurts you. Because you have to keep your balance under 10% of the limit at all times. Make sure you're paying it off early, paying it off often, and you're using the card for things you already plan to spend money on. That means bills, groceries, gas, not new unnecessary expenses. And when you do that, Navy Federal sees your consistent usage. Your score climbs up, and in about 6 months, you can even request a limit increase. So now we're just getting started. In the next section, I'm going to explain to you exactly what happens when you don't have a Navy Federal account yet, and how you can still qualify to open one legitimately, even if you're not in the military. When you hear Navy Federal Credit Union, the word Navy throws people off. They instantly think, oh, that's only for the military. But that's not the full story. Navy Federal was created to serve the armed forces, yes. But over the years, they've expanded their eligibility. So today, if you can connect yourself directly or indirectly to a member of the military or certain branches of the government, you can become a part of that community as well. That means if your mom served, if your dad served, if your spouse or your sibling, or even somebody in your household served, or has military or government connection or affiliation in any way, you can qualify, even if you've never personally worn any type of uniform. You can also join organizations and groups like the American Consumer Council, and that way you can qualify as well, even if you have nobody in your family or know nobody that has any type of military connection. And so here's what you do. If you already know somebody in your family who served, you reach out to them and you ask them for their referral code. Or you can use your member number. You can use that one on the application when you join. But, and this is the part that a lot of people don't realize, you can also go into a local branch and then tell the banker that you'd like to become a member. They'll ask you how you're eligible, and all you have to do is explain your connection. And most of the time, they'll just set you right up. No code required. It's really that simple. People just don't try. Once you've joined, the next step is to establish that relationship through activity. That means opening both a checking and a savings account, making a deposit into each one, and keeping those accounts active and positive. You don't have to go deposit thousands of dollars in there. A few $100s in a checking and a few $100s in your savings is more than enough to show activity. Remember, this is about relationships, not a faceless algorithmic lender. They reward consistency, not flash. Now let's talk about the heart of this hack, okay? Because this is where people will start seeing those $10,000 approvals. After you've opened up your accounts and funded them, you need to give it a few days, all right? Let the system recognize that your relationship and membership is alive and your deposits are clearing, okay? And once that's done, you're ready to apply for a credit card. And you're going to do it after 11 p.m. Why 11 p.m.? Because that's when most of the manual underwriters are home asleep in their beds. The late night applications flow through the computer system, and the computer is way more generous. It's looking at numbers, positive balance, new relationship, steady deposits. It's not judging your history. It's running your data, and if you set up your accounts the right way, that algorithm oftentimes is going to return with big approvals, $10,000 or more. And on your very first try, here's what you need to understand is that people who've never had more than a $500 to $1,000 limit before on their very first try using this exact same process are getting 10, 18, 25, $30,000 limits through Navy Federal using this exact same process. And that's because Navy Federal system measures your trust differently. They're a community credit union. They're designed to help their members grow, not gatekeep. So access to the credit is way more available now than ever before. That's the power of structure and timing. But listen, let me make this clear. Getting approved for $10,000 is not a flex, it's a responsibility. Because if you max it out, then you're right back where you started. And what's worse is you signal to these lenders that you don't know how to manage high limits. So here's what you need to do after you get approved is you need to treat your card like a business tool. Keep your utilization as low as possible. I'm talking about under 10%, and ideally under 5%. When you pay early, you pay often, and you keep your statement balances light. You use it for things you were already spending your money on, like gas, groceries, utilities, and small bills. And then you pay it down every single month. When you do that, your internal score with Navy Federal climbs higher, and in about 6 months, you can request a credit limit increase. And that's where people really start going from 10K to 15K to 20K. And that's how you keep scaling without taking on any new inquiries. And if you really want to join Navy Federal, the step one is to find a connection. Ask around, find someone in your family or friend who may already qualify. Step two is going to be to go online and go to Navy Federal directly and start your membership. Step three is going to be, once you're approved, open your checking and your savings account. And step four is going to be to put small amounts in there and give them a few days to age. After 11 p.m., where everything's aged, you apply and that's it. There's no tricks, no backdoor form, just understanding how the internal system works and make sure that you're applying at the right time with the right setup. If you've ever dealt with big banks that make you feel like a number, this is the opposite experience. Navy Federal's representatives are known for being polite and respectful, and they are super helpful. If you ever have to call, they'll walk you through every step, whatever you need, step by step. And don't let the limit make you feel rich, okay? That's where a lot of people mess up. The goal is not to have access to $10,000 to spend. It's to have $10,000 available credit to you that you don't use. That's what builds your score. When Navy Federal sees that kind of discipline, their system rewards it and they start trusting you with more money. And that's why people come back 6 months later and double their limits. Now let's talk about that 6-month mark. Navy Federal has what's called a 91-3 rule, meaning that 91 days and 3 statement cycles after your approval, that gives them enough payment history to evaluate your behavior. When that time comes, you go into the app and you call in and you request an increase. They'll review your usage and your payments and your internal score. And if you've been keeping your utilization low, making early payments, and maintaining positive balances in your checking and savings, your chances are really strong. So here's how people jump from 10,000 to 15 to 20,000 without opening a new account or taking on a new inquiry. All right, now let's touch on the difference between your personal and business accounts for a minute. Because most of the people watching this are business owners, and you're wondering if the same rule applies. For Navy Federal, their personal credit cards and business credit cards are separate divisions. If you already have a personal membership, you can open a business checking and savings for your LLC. You need your articles of incorporation, your EIN letter from the IRS, your operating agreement, and once those are verified, you can open the account, build a relationship, and eventually apply for a business credit card too. Positive balances and time in relationship matter the most. But since we're focused on personal credit in this video, the main idea is discipline. So let me tell you why discipline matters. When Navy Federal System sees that your spending is consistent and that your payments are reliable, it automatically adjusts your internal credit score. They have an internal score that ranges from 100 to 450. Most people don't even know that this exists. If your internal score is high, you'll start getting pre-approvals in your account dashboard for cards and loans and lines of credit without even having to apply. So every month, you need to manage that card responsibly. You're building not just your external FICO score, but also your internal Navy Federal relationship score. And that's what leads to larger approvals later. Now let's talk about timing again, because after 11 p.m., this rule doesn't just apply for your first card. It also applies when you're requesting increases, opening a second product. The automated system tends to review and approve those late night applications the same way it did the very first one. That's why people who repeat this pattern continue to see success. So here's the rhythm that I recommend. First 3 months, light usage, early payments. Month 4 through 6, you want to slightly increase your usage and your spending, but keep it under 10% if you can. And on the 91-day mark, request your very first increase. And then let that new limit report for another 90 days before you apply for an additional credit limit. And that 6-month window of trust building and relationships will help you get larger and larger limits and build a healthier credit profile overall. So let's be clear about something. This is not a loophole. This is a pattern of behavior that matches how their system is designed to reward its members. You're not tricking the bank. You're aligning with their model of responsible lending. And that's why this works. Now, here's what happens if you try to skip the steps. If you open an account today and then go apply for a card the same hour before any deposits clear, the system's going to flag you and that relationship will be burned. But if you give it a few days and let those balance report and post, your odds go way up. And that's why I say fund it, wait a few days, and then apply after 11 p.m. That small adjustment makes a big difference. And if you're someone who's trying to rebuild your credit after a rough period, this is an excellent way to start, because a high limit credit card with low utilization is the most powerful signal that you can send to the credit bureaus that you've got control again. So don't chase limits for ego, use limits for leverage. That's how you grow quietly, sustainably, and strategically. My name is Innie, and this is My Life for Debt. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.